Hi guys, it's Diane, the Evolved Dietitian here today talking about 5 reasons we're fat and what to do about it. So, food equals fat. Just remember that. It's okay. Extra protein can turn to fat, extra carbohydrate, extra fat. Everything can turn to fat. It's okay. Does that mean we need to count everything? You would think so, that extra, we don't want that extra. But if we think that we need to count every little macronutrient, carbs, proteins, or fats, going into our body, we're just completely missing biochemistry. And we're going to have a little mini biochemistry basic introduction here. Mini. So first of all, again, the 5 reasons we get fat, these are theories. Actually, I semi-pulled them out of my you-know-what, because I really just want to talk about one. But I will mention the others. But they all have to do with this one. We can't gain fat without it. So it's probably very important to talk about. And that's insulin. Insulin is a hormone. We're going to talk about it in great detail today. When we are overexposed to insulin, I was looking for an actual picture of a person going like this, no, and I couldn't find it, at least for free, because I use all the free sites for my videos. So over insulin exposure is the problem. Stress can make you seek foods that make you expose yourself to insulin too much. Pressure from others, those should be in 2 separate categories, but I wanted 5 because I want to use the hand. Dopamine seeking, it's always a problem. You always want a little hit of some fun. That's why we snack all the time. Some people, researchers say that our fat makes us fat. Well, then we're really screwed, right? And then, of course, fatty liver can make us fat. That is true. All these are true, but what's the real problem? That's what we're going to talk about. Here we go. So high insulin levels. It makes it seem like insulin's bad, but no, it's vital. We can't live without it. That's why type 1 diabetics need to inject it. But we only need so much. So what does it do? It helps us with our growth. Our body is always in a state of growing or breaking down. Growing, breaking down. And then if it tips too far on one side or the other, there's a problem. So we'll get to that a little bit. But when insulin is in higher levels in the blood, when it's circulating above basal needs, we are not burning our fat. And that could be a problem if we are eating, and we will, of course, eat more than we need at that moment. Everything gets stored as fat. Not everything, but a lot can get stored as fat. And that's perfectly fine, because when you're not eating, you're going to burn it. Not a problem, right? Well, with our current way of eating these days, it can be a problem. And that's what we're going to get to as well. So, insulin, when it's in our bloodstream because of something we're doing, we are not burning fat. What we are doing is burning our sugar, which is not a bad thing, but we don't want to get stuck in that mode. You'll hear experts say you're a sugar burner. That means that you're not burning your own fat and ketones. And that's not desirable. So we want to burn our own body. That sounds weird too. That is actually desirable. You want to burn the components that you've stored from eating before. So high insulin levels. When you have higher insulin levels from what you've been doing, and then you don't eat, which is desired, your body, as I mentioned before, is running on sugars. Well, we only have so much sugar left in our body at any given time, in our bloodstream and our liver. We have some in our muscle, but that's when we use it when we're moving mainly. So in our liver puts out, replenishes the blood to use just to exist. Well, what if you're not eating? Perfectly fine. We should be able to handle not eating, right? For those that are sugar burners mainly, you're not burning your fat stores for energy, but yet you need energy. So what happens? Your body is so gosh darn amazing that it'll lower the processes that burn and that need energy. So it'll be, okay, we're gonna stay under the radar here. We don't have enough energy. We don't want to run out of energy. So we're gonna bring down our metabolic rate. It goes up and ebb and flow all day long. So when someone says this is how much you burn, this is how much you need to not eat or whatever, that's complete bull. Because we ebb and flow all day long based on something we do and our hormone that influences our hormones. It's not all about metabolic rate. However, our metabolic rate can be dictated by what we're eating, not how much. Ooh, interesting. And over time, with high insulin levels, we can develop a resistance. Whoa, that sounds really good, doesn't it? A resistance? I'm going to resist insulin, so insulin makes my fat stores grow. Huh, doesn't work that way. The areas that we really need it are steroid hormones, sex hormones, things that make us who we are, and our muscles. We need our cells not to be resistant. Those are the areas that we suffer most, that become more resistant, even our liver. That predisposes us to, or that brings us right into diabetes type 2. So let's talk about this insulin again. It's considered the fat burning on off switch. And so let's just take a normal person who doesn't have high insulin levels. They're not eating right now. They ate, now they're not eating. It's called the fasted state. Insulin's low, perfectly normal. That's what you want when you're not eating. So the fat burning switch is on. At that time, in between meals, as long as your insulin's low, you are able to burn. Fat is able to come and go as it pleases. And you're wasting the fat, you're burning the fat for needs. It's very interesting. And I mentioned wasting there because that's another video I'd like to do that I'd like for you to check out between white and brown fats. Pretty fascinating stuff. So not all fat in your body is the same. It's really cool. So when your insulin's low, you're able to burn your fat, but not only that, you make ketones. Highly anti-inflammatory. They're really good for your immune system. Don't be afraid of ketones. I used to be, and I'm going to hit that in a little bit as well. But also, when your insulin's low, it's muscle sparing. You're not going to be using your muscle for energy. And yes, when insulin's a little bit higher, it can help nourish the muscle as well. But just because your insulin's low doesn't mean it's burning. It's actually sparing your muscle because you're able to use the fat for energy instead. And then you have a functional metabolism. It's not being constrained by the lack of ability to burn fat. Therefore, your metabolic rate isn't being held down. Okay, so you eat. That's called the fed state. So when you hear professionals talk, they'll talk about fasted or fed. That's, the lingo. That's a higher insulin level. It doesn't mean sky high. Some people have sky highs. We're talking about a person who just ate and their level of insulin might go up a little bit just to deal with what they ate. Some people don't have a lot, but that's another story. That's for another day. So you have higher insulin, just a little bit. So now you're able to store your fat. It's fat making, perfectly fine, by the way. Fat comes and goes. That's normal. We use it for energy, hopefully, right? Depending on what the switch is doing. So, your muscle is being spared a little bit. You're able to actually save your muscle or make muscle, nourish your muscle. And then, when you're in this fast or fed state because of insulin being around, you may or may not be able, depending on how healthy you are and how used to the use of ketones you are, your metabolism might just slow down a teensy bit. But that's okay, because you're not eating all day, right? It's okay. You just ate. It's going to come back up. Insulin's there, so you're not going to be burning your fat. You're going to be using some sugar. Perfectly normal. You have it in your bloodstream. And even if your meal didn't have any carbohydrate, sugar in it, perfectly fine, because your liver has stored carbohydrate in it. And even if it doesn't, your liver can make it from other components, fat and protein, to put it out into the blood sugar so your cells can use it. Listen up here. When you have higher insulin levels, you're not seeking food. If your cells are sensitive to it, this is a metabolically healthy person. So your ebb and flow is just nice. All of your cells are listening to insulin. They are sensitive to it. Not sensitive like ugh, but sensitive, aware and use it, appreciate it. And then this is, of course, I'm going to remind you, this is a nice metabolically healthy person. The problem is when we have a particular lifestyle and way of eating, there's something that happens to us. I call something ALI, accumulated lifestyle impact. You're going to hear that in obnoxious amounts in my videos, but it's important, so do listen to them. ALI is accumulated lifestyle impact. So it's stuff we've been doing that it's made us who we are at this moment. We can undo a lot of it, but everyone's different, and that's why diets affect everybody differently. And there's other reasons too. But ALI is your lifestyle having an impact on you over time. A lot of us are now in this red zone right here. We have a dysfunctional switch. Dysfunctional liver, that too, but dysfunctional insulin metabolism. And I put in my hands here because I talk with them. I'm really working hard not to. So when insulin is dysfunctional, it's higher in our bloodstream, even if we haven't eaten. So it's called a basal insulin level is higher than it needs to be, higher than it used to be. That means that when that happens, some of your cells say, oh my God, I always call insulin the Italian grandma. I'm teensy bit Italian, so I can say that, right? It's a good thing. I love Italian grandmas. Mangia, mangia, right? So that's wonderful. Oh, people love grandma. She loves to feed us, but after a while, that's enough is enough. I'm full. I don't need any right now. It's okay. Well, in this dysfunctional red zone of higher grandmas, some of the cells are like, no, it's okay. Muscles do that, and different, very important parts of the body say, talk to the hand insulin. Well, what happens? Remember, insulin's really important. Helps muscle growth, helps steroid hormones, helps so many different things in the body. Without it working well, we become dysfunctional. And there's a whole host of problems I talk about in other videos. So definitely visit those. Most of us have some of this, or most of us have a dysfunctional insulin metabolism because of our accumulated lifestyle impact via the SAD diet mainly. So higher insulin levels that are not being heard by certain cells. Unfortunately, for most of us, most all of us, the fat cells can grow, but other very important parts don't. There are other things that go on with the fat cell. The satiety mechanism, assisted by insulin and leptin, doesn't work as well. So when some of our cells are saying la la la, our satiety is too. So our appetite stays high. So we keep seeking food. So that's screwy. We're fat making and saving. We're not able to burn fat, remember, because when insulin's high, we can't burn fat. We will probably use some of that muscle for energy because we can't burn our fat for energy. It's going to slow our metabolism. We're going to be a food seeker. And all this, especially since we can't make ketones, because when insulin's high, we don't make our ketones, well, guess what? A disease, inflammation and disease. So this is screwed up because of our insulin level. Well, that's screwy. Again, I don't want to make insulin sound like the bad guy here. This is most of us. So what the heck is this going on? So we have a switch called insulin. We must stay sensitive to it. So too much, a little bit good, but too much not. What the heck? We have to not overexpose ourselves to the switch. So what's the finger that controls the switch? Yes, I'm a dork, look at that. It's carbohydrate. I know, it sucks. But at least there's something. It's not in your genes. Well, there are always genetic components. That's something that's really always irked me my whole life. It's in your genes. It's in your genes. We can't have it unless the propensity is in the genes. It's impossible to have unless you could have it. It doesn't mean it's your destiny. Okay? Okay. That's another video. So what carbs? Of course, sugar. We all know we don't need the sugar. Obviously, some processed foods like these are not a good idea and increase high insulin levels, increase them. But what about natural sugar? It's natural, right? Unfortunately, your body sees it the same. I'm going to get a lot of hate mail because of that, but just hear me out. When you're already in the red zone, and you are dealing with a high insulin level, then anything with carbohydrate that elicits insulin, even if there's some vegetables with it, it's still better to have the vegetables with it, that's nice, but carbohydrate increases your insulin. So right now, depending on how addicted you are, if you're addicted to carbs, no matter what form, you shouldn't have it. But if you just need to lose weight and get healthier, or you just need to get healthier, then carbohydrate in general needs to be dropped down, and then maybe you can add in some healthier carbs. Real, number one, real. Number two, not too starchy would be nice. Leafy greens, things like that. So make sure you pay attention to your carbohydrates. This is where they're at, and other places. So you have your grains, you have your processed foods. Grains is anything with the bread, any kind of baked item, cereals, even your oatmeal. And then you have your yogurts with the sugar in it. If you can get a real yogurt with fat, high fat, okay. But check total carbohydrate. And you can reduce, you can take the fiber out all you want, but it's still going to stimulate. Total carbohydrates still stimulate your insulin. So, if you notice, I didn't say anything when I talked about the green, yellow, and red. Your metabolism, I didn't say anything about calories. That's because you can know someone who's on a low-calorie diet and they're doing great. You are not them. I don't know what their alley is, their accumulated lifestyle impact. Maybe they were having 5,000 calories of carbs and they dropped it down to 1,500 of something. It's going to make a great impact. Not necessarily the impact you need. I don't know what you're eating. I call when people lose weight on a low carb or low calorie diet a coincidence. I don't hear a lot of people say that. It's a coincidence. They brought down something that was increasing their insulin. It's a coincidence. Okay, coincidence or not, call it what you want. Call it what you want. I don't care what you call it. As long as you're eating your nutrients and as long as you're getting something that exposes you to insulin less carbohydrates. So, the types of foods that elicit these we discussed, but I didn't discuss just resting between meals. Remember, when you're in that fed state, it can lower your insulin. So just a rest from eating is huge. I don't like saying this, but if you don't do anything but skip a meal or two, that could have a big impact for you. Just don't have your sugary drinks between meals and don't snack. Heck, have some real food at your 1 to 3 meals a day and don't snack and have crappy beverages with carbohydrate. That might be all you have to do. Now, if you're addicted, we have to get more. If you're addicted to carbohydrates, we have to get more strict. But what I just said right there might be all you have to do. I always mention processed foods, but also seed oils They are highly inflammatory, and they can also mess up our insulin metabolism, cause a fatty liver, and I think even hurt our satiety mechanism. And that's not cool. So remember, this is a good thing to remember. If you go back to what we talked about with the green, the yellow, green, red, remember I said that when higher insulin is in your bloodstream, that your metabolic rate slows down. So you can equate carbohydrates with slow metabolism, because slow metabolism is such a phrase that scares people. Carbohydrates equals slow metabolism. It's crazy if you have higher insulin levels, and most of us do. So yes, you're going to see a skinny mini. He eats all the carbs he or she wants. Their accumulated lifestyle impact hasn't hit the red zone yet. Don't we need carbohydrates, Diane? I'll do a video on this, but no. Glucose? Yes. What's the difference? Glucose is in our body. Carbohydrates outside the body. We don't need to bring them in. We make them. That's all. We make glucose, but we also haven't talked a lot about ketones. There's a few different fuels, and we talk about carbohydrates as a fuel. Yes, our blood sugar we use as a fuel. And then we talk about that we can make on our own and not eat, right? We don't need an external source for that glucose because we make it in our body. But also, we use our own fat as a fuel. Hopefully, because we have lower insulin levels, we're allowed to use the fat. And then we also use ketones. All of us do. You don't have to be on keto to make ketones. We all make them. This is only if your insulin level permits. The lower it is, the better for ketones. So it used to be that if we heard, oh, there's ketones, oh, they're in ketosis. Ketosis is not a bad thing. It's ketoacidosis. That's a bad thing. Stuff I wish I knew a long time ago. I feel stupid. You're not stupid, you're just misinformed. But now you know better. So, ketoacidosis is highly inflammatory. It's acidic, and it does mean that you could be on death's door. But that happens when it's dangerous, or when ketoacidosis occurs. It's when you're unable to use your glucose, yet your ketones are high. That's type 1 diabetes. That's highly inflammatory. So you got your sugar and your ketones. Ketosis is when your sugar is relatively low, your insulin is low, you're making ketones to burn. That's balance. So ketosis is ketones in the blood. This does not mean ketoacidosis. And ketones are normal and beneficial. Very beneficial. That doesn't mean you should take them from outside sources. It's the whole thing, the whole process that actually allows you to make ketones is part of the benefit. And then the ketones themselves, endogenous, very beneficial. So we, especially as a dietitian, think that we need all these fruits and vegetables to be healthy, right? Often us professionals feel that way because it helps with our everyday oxidative stress, excuse me, animals, that we create just from living. Completely normal to have some oxidative stress. We need it for certain things to occur in our body. But we don't need it all the time, and yes, it can cause inflammation and disease. So we always thought we needed large amounts of fruits and vegetables to combat this. But if we don't have overexposure of carbohydrates, that usually those things come in, we don't have all that stress to combat. This means, and we are able to make ketones, which are also anti-inflammatory. So I'm going to put our minds at ease. If someone doesn't have a vegetable for the day, it's okay. Or even longer. I know. It's a whole different way of thinking. I've evolved. So what is the antidote? Well, number one, I mentioned before, real food. Processed foods suck, and they will suck the life out of you. And you'll look like you have plenty of life in you. You'll be plump. Not necessarily, some people. If you have that propensity. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to have that propensity, by the way. It could be protective. I know you don't want to hear that. Lower carbohydrate. All if you're addicted. But if you don't have a carb addiction problem, you don't use it for coping, then you can have your vegetables, maybe some fruits. But if you're trying to get your insulin levels down, the less carb, the easier right now. So go all carny at first, and it really helps. But some people need to go slower than others. Adequate protein, adequate fat. You will get those two things by what I just said. Fiber. Don't be afraid of fiber, but you don't need to add it in. It's the other video. And then I put at the very bottom, sometimes. Yes, we don't need to eat all the time. If you're feeling adequate fuel because you're able to burn your fat, your body, your mouth will go seek less often. So you won't have to eat more often. And if you're not able to burn your fat stores, you're going to be seeking food. But also some people who are burning their fat stores okay still might have an addictive component, making them seek a dopamine hit. They want to get high off of a food. And that's for another video as well. And those people definitely need some outside assistance. And nothing to be ashamed of. It's very common. This is what real food looks like, everybody. Doesn't mean you have to have what's here. This is a very common day in my life, especially the meat side. Yeah. Oh, the eggs. I'm an eggaholic. I'm an eggivore. So, it doesn't mean you need to eat like me. You are the artist. These are your resources. These are your paints. You make the pictures that you like. That's what I tell people. I don't make diets. I help you become an effective painter. So if you've learned anything in this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up and share it. More importantly, share it with those that you love. If you've learned anything here, press subscribe. And if you have any questions or you have some ideas for some videos, make sure to leave it in the comments below. I so appreciate you spending your time listening to me. Have a wonderful day. Let's evolve together. Thanks.